They say courage doesn't roar. It trembles, it stammers, it stands small in the face of terror, and still steps forward. Imagine a moment when time freezes, when the line between impossible and miraculous blurs. 6-year-old Laura Thompson stood trembling in the scorching Arizona sun, her tiny frame casting a long shadow across the dusty ground of Safari Adventure Park. Before her, a scene from nightmares unfolded, her beloved 3-legged German shepherd, Tom, writhing in the powerful coils of a massive Burmese python. The snake's scales gleamed like wet stones as it tightened its death grip around Tom's chest. "Tom!" Laura's scream tore through the air, her small hands clutching her father's electric prod, which weighed almost as much as her arm. Blood pounded in her ears as she took one desperate step forward. That's when she heard it, a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the earth beneath her feet. Turning slowly, Laura's blue eyes widened in terror as she saw them emerging from the tall grass, a pride of lions, golden in the afternoon light, their eyes fixed on the struggle before them. In that frozen heartbeat, Laura made a choice that would change everything. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Safari Adventure Park stretched across 200 acres of Arizona landscape, a place where animals roamed in habitats designed to mimic their natural environments. At the edge of this sprawling sanctuary sat a modest ranch house with a weathered barn converted into an animal rescue shelter. This was home to the Thompsons, young Laura, her father Jimmy, and her grandmother Maria. Laura Thompson was no ordinary 6-year-old, small for her age, with blonde hair that caught the sunlight like spun gold, and eyes blue as desert cornflowers. She possessed an uncanny connection with animals that even her grandmother couldn't explain. "That child," Maria would often say, was born with the good Lord's gift of animal speaking. Since losing her mother as an infant, Laura had found comfort in the company of creatures, her quiet voice coming alive when she sat reading storybooks to the rescue animals. Tom had arrived at Maria's rescue 3 years ago, a broken shadow of his former glory. The German Shepherd had served as an elite search and rescue dog until a burning building collapsed, trapping him as he pulled a child to safety. The accident claimed his right front leg and left him with deep scars, both physical and emotional. The once proud working dog had become aggressive and fearful, deemed unadoptable by the very service that once celebrated his heroism. "He's just hurting inside," 7-year-old Laura had whispered when she first saw him, ignoring Maria's warnings to stay back. While the adults argued about Tom's fate, Laura had slipped into his kennel and sat quietly beside him, her small hand resting near his paw. By morning, they found her curled against his side, both sleeping peacefully. From that day forward, they were inseparable, the 3-legged shepherd and the fatherless girl, healing each other with a devotion that needed no words. Jimmy Thompson worked as Safari Adventure's Chief Wildlife Conservation Officer, a position that demanded long hours and unwavering dedication. A tall man with weathered features and kind eyes, he relied heavily on his mother-in-law, Maria, to help raise Laura. At 72, Maria Thompson remained spry and sharp-minded, her lifetime as a veterinarian making her small rescue operation a respected institution in the community. With her silver hair always pulled into a practical bun and hands perpetually smelling of healing salves, Maria dispensed wisdom as readily as she did animal care. The morning had dawned clear and bright, the kind of Arizona day where heat rose in invisible waves from the parched earth. Laura sat cross-legged on the porch of Maria's animal rescue, reading aloud from the Jungle Book while Tom lay beside her, his 3 legs tucked neatly beneath him, his brown eyes never leaving her face. As she reached the part about Mowgli's bravery, Maria appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, her expression tight with concern. "Jimmy is coming to pick you up, sweetie," Maria announced, her weathered hands smoothing down her apron. "There's been some kind of emergency at the safari, and he can't find anyone to watch you today." Laura closed her book, a flutter of excitement rising in her chest. She rarely got to visit her father at work. "Can Tom come too?" she asked, instinctively placing her small hand on the shepherd's broad head. Maria frowned, lines deepening around her mouth. I don't think that's wise, child. Safari's no place for a three-legged dog, especially not on a busy day. But Grandma, Laura protested, her blue eyes widening. Tom gets scared when I'm gone too long. He thinks I won't come back. This wasn't childish imagination. Tom had developed severe separation anxiety after losing his leg, a fact documented by every chewed doorframe and shredded pillow in their home. Maria sighed, recognizing the truth in her granddaughter's words. Well, land's sakes, I suppose he can go, but you both stay put wherever your daddy tells you to. Safari Adventure ain't no playground, especially not during an emergency. When Jimmy Thompson's truck pulled up in a cloud of dust, his face showed the strain of a morning gone sideways. "Thanks, Mom," he said, helping Laura and Tom into the passenger seat. "One of the new handlers left a gate unlocked during feeding time. We've got animals out of their enclosures, and I need all hands on deck." As they drove towards Safari Adventure, Laura pressed her face against the window, watching the landscape change from rocky desert to the curated wilderness of the park. Tom sat nervously on her lap, his weight heavy but comforting. "It'll be okay, Tom," she whispered into his alert ear. "We'll stay together." Jimmy parked near the administrative building, a low-slung structure of adobe and glass. "Laura," he said firmly, kneeling to meet her eyes, "I need you to stay in my office until I come back. Do not leave for any reason. Do you understand?" When she nodded, he added, "And keep Tom on his leash. There's too much going on today for him to be wandering around." "Yes, Daddy," Laura promised, clutching Tom's leash tightly as they followed Jimmy through the staff entrance. The office was small but cool, with a desk covered in papers and walls lined with wildlife conservation posters. A window overlooked a portion of the park where staff hurried back and forth, their voices raised in urgent commands. "Be good, sweetheart," Jimmy said, kissing the top of her head before hurrying out, walkie-talkie already crackling with reports from around the park. For a while, Laura sat quietly at her father's desk, drawing pictures with the colored pencils she'd found in a drawer. Tom lay at her feet, seemingly content, though his ears twitched at every unusual sound. The walkie-talkie left on the desk occasionally burst to life with fragments of conversation. "Pythons still unaccounted for. Section 5 secure. Moving to Section 6. Tranquilizers ready if needed." Laura's crayon stilled mid-stroke. Python. She remembered the massive snake enclosure from her last visit, how the giant reptiles had frightened and fascinated her in equal measure. The largest, a Burmese python named Monty, had been nearly as long as her father was tall. A new voice crackled through the walkie-talkie, her grandmother's voice. "Jimmy, Maria here. I'm at the reptile house with Dr. William. We've located shed skin, but no snake. I'm heading toward the west perimeter to check the drainage ditches. These creatures love water when they're stressed." Laura felt a chill despite the warm office. Grandma Maria was here at Safari Adventure. She must have followed them, probably worried about the emergency. Maria had worked with Safari Adventure for years before retiring, and everyone still called her when animals needed special handling. Tom suddenly lifted his head, a low growl building in his chest. His ears pricked forward, and his body tensed beneath Laura's hand. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, feeling her own body respond to his alertness. The distinctive three-note whistle that followed was unmistakable, Maria's special call, the one she used when feeding the rescue animals. Laura had grown up hearing it, its cheery tune, a signal that good things were coming, but now it sounded distant and somehow wrong. Not the confident summons Laura knew, but wavering and weak. Tom whined, pulling toward the door, his nails clicking on the tile floor. "We need to stay here, Tom," Laura reminded him, but her voice lacked conviction. She went to the window, standing on tiptoe to see outside. Staff members were still rushing about, their focus directed away from the administrative buildings toward the main part of the park. The whistle came again, fainter this time. Then a sound that made Laura's blood run cold, a cry of pain, her grandmother's voice. Tom barked sharply, lunging against his leash with such force that Laura stumbled forward, nearly losing her grip. "Grandma needs help," Laura whispered, her 6-year-old mind processing this fact with absolute certainty. She glanced at the door her father had disappeared through, remembering her promise to stay put. But Grandma Maria's whistle came again, even weaker than before. In that moment, Laura made a decision that would change everything. "Come on, Tom," she said, her small fingers fumbling with the office doorknob. "We have to find Grandma." Sometimes it's not the strongest who save the day. It's the one who refuses to give up, no matter how small. Tom's growl deepened, the sound vibrating through his entire body. Laura felt a wave of terror wash over her as she watched the python's muscular form constrict tighter around Sandy. The retriever's struggles were growing weaker, her eyes bulging with panic. "We have to help her," Laura cried, her child's heart unable to process the danger fully, only seeing an animal in desperate need. "Stay back, child," Maria warned, trying to pull herself up despite her injured ankle. "That python's big enough to take down a deer. It'll make quick work of a little girl." But as Sandy let out a pitiful whine, something inside Tom snapped. With a snarl Laura had never heard from her gentle companion, Tom lunged forward, breaking free from Laura's slack grip on his leash.
"Tom, no!" Laura screamed, reaching out futilely as the three-legged shepherd charged toward the python and its victim. Maria struggled to stand, her face contorted with pain. "Lord above, and that dog's got more courage than sense. Laura, run back to the building now. Go get your daddy!" But Laura stood frozen, unable to tear her eyes away from the unfolding scene. Tom, despite his disability, moved with the precision and focus that had once made him a legendary search and rescue dog. He circled the python, barking fiercely, trying to distract it from Sandy. The massive snake, disturbed by this new threat, partially unwound from the retriever. Its triangular head swiveled to track Tom's movements. Sandy collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, but still trapped within some of the python's coils. "That's it, Tom," Maria whispered, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and hope. "Draw it away from Sandy." Tom continued his tactical approach, darting in to nip at the python's tail before dancing out of its striking range. Each movement was calculated, using his disability as an advantage. He stayed low to the ground, pivoting sharply on his three legs in ways a four-legged dog couldn't manage. Laura watched in awe as her beloved pet transformed before her eyes, no longer the traumatized rescue dog, but the hero he had been born to be. For a moment, it seemed Tom's strategy was working. The python released more of its hold on Sandy, focusing its attention on the more immediate threat. Then disaster struck. In his determination to save Sandy, Tom miscalculated. He darted in too close, and the python struck with lightning speed. Its powerful jaws latched onto Tom's hind leg. Before Laura could even scream, the snake began coiling its massive body around the shepherd. Laura's voice shattered the tense silence, her small body lunging forward instinctively. Maria grabbed her granddaughter's shirt with desperate strength. "No, Laura, you can't help him that way." Tom's eyes found Laura's across the distance. In that moment, something passed between them, a look of such profound trust and love that it cut through Laura's panic like a knife, even as the python's coils tightened around his chest. Tom's gaze never left hers, as if drawing strength from their connection. "We have to do something, Grandma," Laura sobbed, her small frame shaking with helpless terror. "He's dying." Maria's eyes darted around frantically, searching for anything that might help. Her gaze landed on the overturned medical cart. "Laura, listen to me very carefully," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "In that cart is a cattle prod, a special tool your daddy uses for emergencies with large animals. It delivers a small electric shock, just enough to startle without causing real harm." Laura's tears slowed as she processed her grandmother's words.
"Like the one Daddy showed me in his truck?" "That's right, sweetheart. It looks like a long stick with a black handle. If you can get it to me, I might be able to help Tom." Laura moved toward the cart, her small hands shaking as she rummaged through the scattered medical supplies. Bandages, bottles, and syringes littered the ground, but there was no sign of the cattle prod. "I don't see it, Grandma." Panic crept back into her voice as she heard Tom's painful yelp. The python was tightening its grip. Maria grimaced, trying to crawl closer. "It has to be there somewhere. Child, keep looking." Sandy, finally free from the python's grasp, had dragged herself a short distance away, whimpering softly. Tom was now fully in the snake's clutches, his powerful body rendered helpless by the python's crushing embrace. His breaths came in short, desperate pants, each one more labored than the last. Maria called, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Look over by that shed. Jimmy always keeps equipment there for emergencies." Laura darted toward the small maintenance shed, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The door was padlocked, but a window stood slightly ajar. Standing on tiptoe, Laura peered inside. There it was, an electric prod hanging on the wall, just within reach if she stretched her arm through the window. The metal rod was heavier than she expected, nearly slipping from her grasp as she carefully extracted it. Its weight dragged at her small arms as she hurried back to her grandmother. "Good girl," Maria praised, reaching for the prod. But as she tried to stand, her ankle gave way beneath her, sending her crashing back to the ground with a cry of pain. "Damn this old body!" she muttered, tears of frustration welling in her eyes. Laura looked from her grandmother to Tom, his struggles growing weaker by the second. The python had almost completely immobilized him, its powerful body wrapped twice around his chest and neck. Tom's eyes were beginning to glaze over, his tongue lolling from his mouth as he fought for each breath. In that moment, something shifted inside Laura Thompson. The frightened 6-year-old girl fell away, replaced by a determination that seemed to rise from deep within her. Without a word, she gripped the cattle prod in both hands. "Laura, no!" Maria cried, realizing her granddaughter's intention. "It's too dangerous!" But Laura was already moving, her small sneakers kicking up dust as she approached the python and Tom. The snake's attention was fully focused on its prey, its body continuing to tighten with each of Tom's weakening heartbeats. "You remember what your daddy taught you?" Maria called, her voice trembling. "The head, Laura! Aim for the head, but don't get too close." Laura circled around until she could see the python's head. Its cold, unblinking eyes registered her presence. But it didn't release Tom. The shepherd's gaze found hers one more time, a silent plea that broke her heart. "I'm coming, Tom," she whispered, her knuckles white around the prod's handle. Maria watched in horrified fascination as her 6-year-old granddaughter, who needed help reaching the top shelf of the refrigerator and still had trouble tying her shoes, faced down one of nature's most efficient predators. "Lord above," she prayed softly, "protect that child." With a determination that belied her years, Laura stepped forward, the prod extended like a lance. The python's head swiveled toward her, sensing a new threat. For a heartbeat, girl and snake regarded each other. Innocent blue eyes met ancient, predatory ones. "Let go of my dog," Laura demanded, her voice surprisingly steady. When the snake didn't move, something fierce and protective flashed across her young face. "Let go of him, now." With a courage born of desperate love, Laura jabbed the prod toward the python's head, her small finger finding and pressing the activation button, just as her father had once shown her. The electric current crackled through the air as the prod made contact with the python's scales. The massive snake convulsed, its body momentarily loosening around Tom as it reacted to the shock. It wasn't enough to make it release him completely, but for Tom, that moment was all he needed. Summoning what little strength remained in his battered body, Tom twisted violently within the loosened coils, creating just enough space to pull one leg free. "That's it, Tom," Laura encouraged, her voice high and thin with fear, but steady with purpose. Maria had dragged herself closer, her experienced eyes assessing the situation with professional detachment despite her terror. "Keep the prod ready, Laura," she instructed. "But wait for my signal. We need to time this perfectly." The python, recovering from the initial shock, began to tighten its grip again. Tom's eyes bulged with the pressure, a pitiful whine escaping his throat as his ribs compressed under the crushing force. "Now, Laura!" Maria shouted. "The head! Again!" Laura lunged forward, jabbing the prod toward the python's head with all the strength her small arms could muster. This time, she held the button down longer, her face contorted with determination and fear. The snake's body convulsed violently, its muscular coils spasming as the electric current disrupted its nervous system. In that crucial moment, Tom summoned a final, desperate surge of energy. With a yelp that was part pain, part battle cry, he wrenched his body sideways, exploiting his smaller size and the unique leverage his three-legged stance provided. The python's grip slipped, and Tom tumbled free, collapsing onto the dusty ground with a heavy thud. "Tom!" Laura dropped the prod and rushed toward her dog, but Maria's voice stopped her. "Stay back, child! That snake's still dangerous!" The python, momentarily disoriented, was already recovering. Its massive body slithered across the ground with surprising speed, readjusting as it prepared to strike again. Its cold eyes locked on Tom, who lay panting heavily, unable to rise. Sandy, who had been watching from a distance, suddenly barked, a sharp, warning sound that drew the python's attention away from Tom. The golden retriever, though injured, had found the courage to create a diversion. Laura seized the opportunity, darting forward to grab the cattle prod once more. This time, she approached from behind the snake, remembering her father's words during one of their nature walks. "Snakes can't see well behind them. Most predators don't attack from the rear." With the python focused on Sandy, Laura carefully positioned herself. The prod felt impossibly heavy in her hands, but adrenaline gave her strength beyond her years. Maria watched in terrified awe as her granddaughter, just a tiny slip of a girl in her Wilderness Explorer t-shirt and scuffed sneakers, faced down one of nature's most perfect predators. "Steady, Laura," Maria called softly. "Remember what we talked about with the rescue animals. Slow movements, no sudden." Before she could finish, the python sensed Laura's presence. It whipped around with startling speed. Laura stumbled backward, nearly dropping the prod as the massive snake reared up, its head now level with her chest. Time seemed to freeze. Laura stood face to face with the python, close enough to see the flick of its forked tongue tasting the air between them. Tom struggled to rise, his 3 legs scrabbling weakly against the dirt as he tried to reach Laura. In that suspended moment, a strange calm settled over Laura Thompson. All her 6 years of life, the stories, the lessons, the quiet afternoons reading about animals, crystallized into a single understanding. This wasn't a monster, just a creature doing what it knew. "I'm not afraid of you," Laura whispered, her blue eyes locked with the python's alien gaze. "But I won't let you hurt Tom." The python swayed, assessing this new, unmoving figure. Laura kept still, completely still. She remembered, too much motion triggers the attack. Stillness might make her seem less threatening. Tom had finally managed to rise, his protective instincts overriding his pain. He limped toward Laura, positioning himself between her and the snake. Blood matted his fur. His breaths came in ragged gasps, but he stood his ground. Even the fiercest hearts remember the ones who saved them, even across species, but the fierce light of protection burned in Tom's eyes. "Tom, no!" Laura pleaded, seeing how badly injured he was. "Stay back!" But Tom would not be deterred. With a growl that seemed to rise from the very core of his being, he faced the python once more. The contrast was stark, a 3-legged, battered shepherd standing against a 15-foot apex predator in its prime. Yet in that moment, Tom appeared majestic, his courage transforming him from a disabled rescue dog into a warrior. The python, recognizing the renewed threat, refocused its attention on Tom. As it prepared to strike, Laura saw her opportunity. With her grandmother's encouraging nod, she circled wide, approaching the python from its blind spot. The electric prod extended before her like a knight's lance. She took aim at the base of the snake's head, the spot her father had once identified as the location of the reptile's brainstem. "For Tom," she whispered, and pressed the button. The connection was perfect. The python's entire body went rigid, then began to thrash wildly. Its massive coils whipped across the ground, narrowly missing Laura as she scrambled backward. Maria cried out a warning as the snake's tail lashed dangerously close to Tom, but the shepherd, running on pure adrenaline, managed to dodge the flailing coils. For several heart-stopping seconds, the python's convulsions continued. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the thrashing stopped. The massive snake lay still, not dead, but stunned into temporary immobility. "You did it, child!" Maria exclaimed, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Lord have mercy! You actually did it!" Laura dropped the prod and ran to Tom, falling to her knees beside him. His fur was sticky with blood, his sides heaved with the effort of breathing, but he was alive. Laura wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur. Tom's tongue lolled out to weakly lick her cheek. "He's hurt bad. Grandma!" Laura called, her voice breaking. as she took in the full extent of Tom's injuries. Deep abrasions circled his chest where the python's scales had cut into him, and his breathing carried Teet's worrying rattle. One of his hind legs was bent at an unnatural angle, likely broken in his desperate struggle to free himself. Maria dragged herself closer, her trained eye cataloguing Tom's injuries with professional detachment despite the deep emotional connection. "He needs the vet clinic right away," she confirmed, gently probing Tom's ribcage and wincing at what she felt. "I think he's got broken ribs pressing against his lungs." Sandy, the golden retriever whose life Tom had just saved, cautiously approached. She nosed gently at him, whining softly as if in gratitude and concern. The two dogs touched noses briefly, a silent communication passing between them. "We need to get help," Maria said, reaching for her walkie-talkie, only to find it had been crushed in her fall. "Laura, you'll have to go back to the main building." Her words cut off abruptly. A new sound reached them, a deep, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate the very air. It wasn't the warning growl of a domestic dog like Tom. It was something primal, wild, a sound that awakened ancient human fears. Laura felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise before she even registered why. Slowly she turned toward the source of the sound, her arms still wrapped protectively around Tom. "Don't move, Laura," Maria breathed, her face draining of color. "Don't make any sudden movements." At the edge of the clearing, where the service road curved around a stand of desert scrub, stood a magnificent male lion. His tawny mane caught the sunlight like burnished gold. His amber eyes surveyed the scene with imperial detachment. Behind him, partially obscured by brush, Laura could make out the forms of several lionesses and what appeared to be two half-grown cubs. "The lion habitat," Maria whispered, realization dawning on her face. It must have been breached in the emergency too. Laura felt Tom tense beneath her hands, a low rumble building in his chest despite his injuries. Sandy cowered behind them, tail tucked between her legs. "It's okay, Tom," Laura soothed, though her own heart threatened to pound its way out of her chest. "Stay still." The male lion took a step forward, his massive paws silent on the dusty ground. Then another. But his gaze wasn't on Laura or Maria. It was on the python, now beginning to stir again, its muscular body starting to undulate as it recovered from the shock. "He's hunting the snake," Maria realized, her voice barely audible. "Laura, we need to make ourselves as small and non-threatening as possible. Lions don't usually see humans as prey, unless they're starving or feel threatened." Laura nodded and tried to make herself tiny, still supporting Tom's head in her lap. The shepherd's eyes stayed fixed on the approaching lion, his body trembling with effort as he held his protective posture. The lion paused about 20 feet away, tail swishing contemplatively. Then, astonishingly, he sat down on his haunches, regarding them with what almost seemed like curiosity. "Well, I'll be," Maria breathed, "in all my 72 years." The python had fully revived now and was beginning to slither away, sensing the presence of a new, apex predator. The lion watched it go with surprising indifference, making no move to attack. Behind the male, the lionesses emerged fully from the brush. One of them, slightly smaller than the rest, with a distinctive notch in her left ear, approached cautiously. Her eyes were fixed not on Laura or Maria, but on Tom. "Grandma," Laura whispered, tightening her hold on Tom as the lioness drew nearer. "What do we do?" For once in her life, Maria seemed at a loss for words. In all her years of veterinary work and wildlife experience, she had never seen anything like this. The notched lioness stopped a few yards away from Tom, her head low, nostrils flaring as she scented the air. Tom, summoning what little strength he had left, raised his head to meet her gaze. For a long moment, dog and lioness regarded each other, silent communication passing between them. Then, to everyone's shock, the lioness made a soft chuffing sound, not a growl or roar, but a gentle vocalization lions use among their pride. She took another step forward, then gracefully lay down on the ground, her posture completely non-threatening. I don't believe what I'm seeing," Maria whispered, her professional curiosity overriding her fear. "It's almost as if," before she could finish, a new voice cut through the surreal scene. "Laura! Maria!" Jimmy Thompson's panicked shout rang out as he rounded the bend in the service road, tranquilizer rifle in hand. Behind him came 3 other Safari Adventure staff members, similarly armed. Jimmy froze, taking in the impossible sight: his mother-in-law injured on the ground, his 6-year-old daughter cradling a bloodied Tom, a pride of lions watching them with eerie calm, and a massive python retreating into the underbrush. "Nobody move," he commanded, raising his rifle with trembling hands. "I'll take the male first." "No, Daddy!" Laura cried, raising her hand instinctively. "They're not hurting us. They're helping." Jimmy hesitated, his rifle still half raised. His training and instincts screamed to protect his family, to take the shot. But something about the lion's posture gave him pause. There was no aggression, no predatory energy. "Laura," he called, keeping his voice calm, "I need you to very slowly stand up and back away from Tom." "I can't leave him, Daddy," Laura said, her small hands buried in Tom's fur. "He's hurt bad, and he saved us from the python." The notched lioness remained motionless. Her amber eyes moved between Tom and Laura with an almost intelligent glimmer. The male lion settled more comfortably into his position, his massive mane glowing in the afternoon light as he surveyed the humans with regal detachment. Maria, now propped against a nearby rock, waved to catch her son-in-law's attention. "Jimmy," she called softly, "something very unusual is happening here. These lions, they're not acting like predators. They've had every opportunity to attack, but they didn't. They seem more interested in the python." Dr. Eleanor William, Safari Adventure's head veterinarian, crept forward beside Jimmy. "She's right," she murmured, her own awe unmistakable. "This isn't predatory behavior. It's almost like they're standing guard." Director Ronan Callahan, a barrel-chested man with 30 years of wildlife experience, lowered his tranquilizer rifle slightly. "I've never seen anything like it," he admitted. "The female, she keeps looking at the dog like she recognizes him." Jimmy's mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible tableau: his tiny daughter, her injured dog, a pride of lions, and no violence. "Daddy," Laura said again, her voice clear and sure, "I think they remember Tom." "Remember him?" Jimmy echoed, still confused. "Laura, that's not possible. Tom has never—" "The Wilkinson Forest fire," Maria interrupted, her voice suddenly intense. 3 years ago, Jimmy. That's when Tom lost his leg." Jimmy's arms dropped slightly as memories surged back. The Wilkinson Forest fire, one of the worst disasters the region had ever seen. Tom had been part of the rescue team, tracking people and animals trapped by the flames. "But what does that have to do with these lions?" he asked. Maria's eyes sparkled. "Don't you remember? 3 of Safari's lions had been temporarily relocated to a rehab facility at the forest's edge. A mother and 2 cubs, injured by poachers. They were scheduled for return the following week." Dr. William gasped softly. "The notched ear female," she whispered. "That's Malin, one of those cubs. She'd be fully grown now. The other must be her brother, Keon." "And the male?" Director Callahan asked. "A wild lion that joined our pride 2 years ago," William replied. "We named him Lafasa. He's the father of Malan's cubs." Jimmy's mind flashed back to that chaotic week. Evacuations, burning trees, the emergency call that Tom's team had been the last to check the rehab site. "Tom found them," he said slowly. "The mother lion was already dead, smoke inhalation. But Tom located the cubs hiding in a drainage culvert. He went in 3 times, despite the heat, the smoke. That's when the burning tree fell on him," Maria added softly, "crushed his leg. But he'd already gotten the cubs out." Laura looked up at her father, her blue eyes full of wonder. "See, Daddy? They remember him. They know Tom saved them." The idea was impossible. Lions couldn't remember such things, couldn't connect across species. Yet Malin, the notched lioness, crept closer to Tom. Her posture was low and gentle. She chuffed softly again. Tom, despite the pain, lifted his head slightly. His tail gave a single, weak wag. Director Callahan shook his head in disbelief. "In 30 years of wildlife work," he said quietly, "I've never seen anything like this. It changes what we think we know about animals, about memory, about connection." Dr. Williams stepped forward, her voice calm and clinical. That dog needs immediate medical care. Multiple crush injuries, possible pneumothorax from the constriction, and that hind leg, it's definitely broken. Sometimes the wild doesn't just remember, it protects. Jimmy nodded grimly, but the question remained. How to extract his daughter and the injured dog from the midst of a lion pride without triggering their predatory instincts? Tranquilizing the lions was an option, but the drugs would take precious minutes to work. Minutes Tom might not have. Laura, however, had no such concerns. With the innocent confidence of a child who believed in the fundamental goodness of animals, she looked directly at Malin and spoke as if addressing a friend. "My dog needs help," she said simply. "He's hurt really bad. We need to take him to the doctor now." To the astonishment of every adult present, Malan responded to Laura's voice by backing up several steps, creating a clear path between the humans and Tom. The male lion, Lefasa, remained stationary but watchful, his massive head tracking the movements of Jimmy and the other staff. "I'll be damned," muttered Officer Mike Donovan, Safari Adventures head of security. "It's like they understand." Dr. Williams seized the moment. She approached Laura and Tom with slow, deliberate movements. "I need to examine him quickly," she explained gently, kneeling beside the injured shepherd. Her experienced hands moved with care, assessing the extent of the trauma. "Multiple broken ribs," she reported grimly. "Possible pneumothorax, fractured tibia in the remaining hind leg. He needs surgery. Immediately." Jimmy edged closer to Laura, fighting the instinct to scoop her up and run. "Laura, sweetheart, we need to let Dr. William take Tom now. He's very badly hurt." Tears welled in Laura's eyes as the weight of Tom's condition sank in. "Is he going to die, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. Before Jimmy could respond, Maria spoke up from where she leaned against the rock. "Now you listen here, Laura Thompson," she said firmly, her no-nonsense tone returning despite her own injuries. "That dog's got more grit and determination than most people I've known in 72 years. He didn't survive a burning building and learn to live on 3 legs just to give up now." Laura nodded, drawing strength from her grandmother's steel. She leaned down and whispered in Tom's ear, "You have to be brave a little longer, Tom. Dr. William is going to make you better." As if understanding, Tom gave a soft whine and licked Laura's cheek once more. He allowed Dr. William to slide a folded emergency blanket beneath him. With Officer Donovan's help, they fashioned a makeshift stretcher. "What about Grandma?" Laura asked, suddenly remembering. "I'm right behind you, child," Maria assured her, accepting Director Callahan's help to stand. "Just a sprained ankle, nothing that won't heal with a little time and a lot of complaining." As Dr. William and Officer Donovan prepared to lift Tom, the lions stirred. The adults tensed, fingers twitching near their tranquilizer triggers, but Laura remained calm, with a quiet assurance far beyond her years. She turned toward the pride.
"Thank you for helping us," she said solemnly, addressing Malin. "Tom is my best friend, just like he helped you when you were little." The notched-eared lioness made that soft chuffing sound once more, then slowly backed away, rejoining Lofesa and her cubs. The pride retreated a few yards, still watchful, but clearly yielding passage, as they began the careful trek toward the main facility. Jimmy kept himself between the lions and his daughter, tranquilizer rifle at the ready, despite the animal's apparent benevolence. "Laura," he said softly, "what you did today was incredibly brave, but also incredibly dangerous. You could have been killed." Laura looked up at her father, her small face serious. "I had to help Tom and Grandma," she said simply. "Tom would do it for me. He did do it for me." Jimmy couldn't argue with that. Tom had proven his devotion more than once, none more dramatic than today. Still, the thought of how close he'd come to losing Laura made Jimmy's blood run cold. "The python," Dr. Williams said suddenly. "We still need to recapture it." Director Callahan glanced back at the pride, now resting in the shade of a large boulder. "I have a feeling our escaped python won't be a problem much longer," he said dryly. "Lions consider snakes a delicacy." At the main service road, a veterinary transport vehicle was waiting. Laura refused to leave Tom's side. "I'm going with him," she insisted, her chin lifting defiantly, so reminiscent of her late mother that Jimmy's heart ate. Dr. William nodded, understanding. "She can ride with us to the clinic," she assured Jimmy. I might need her there anyway. He seems calmer when she's close. As the vehicle pulled away, Laura held Tom's paw in her small hand, whispering to him as Dr. William inserted and forecatheter and administered emergency pain medication. Tom's breathing was labored, each breath clearly painful, but his brown eyes never left Laura's face. You're going to be okay, she told him with the quiet certainty only a child could carry. You saved Sandy. You saved me and Grandma. Now it's our turn to save you. From the rear window, Laura looked back. She saw her father and Director Callahan still standing at the edge of the road. In the distance, the pride of lions lingered. Just before the vehicle rounded the bend, the male lion rose. His golden mane blazed in the dying light as he turned and led his family back into the heart of Safari Adventure. The Safari Adventure Veterinary Clinic was a state-of-the-art facility equipped to handle everything from injured lemurs to emergency surgery on elephants. Today, its team moved with rapid precision as Dr. William wheeled Tom to the sliding glass doors, Laura trotting beside the gurney, her hand never leaving his fur. Operating room 2, Dr. William called. Page Dr. Ramirez for anesthesia. I want a full blood panel, portable chest x-ray, and get that ultrasound ready. Laura watched in stunned silence as the team worked. One tech inserted another 4. Another began attaching monitors. A third gently cut away Tom's blood-matted fur to reveal his injuries. Laura, Dr. Williams said softly, kneeling beside her, we need to take Tom into surgery now. There's a special room down the hall where you can wait with your dad. Laura shook her head, blonde hair swaying. I promised I wouldn't leave him, she said, her voice trembling but fierce. Dr. William glanced at Jimmy, who had just arrived with Maria, now seated in a wheelchair, her ankle wrapped in gauze. Sweetheart, Jimmy began, kneeling beside her. Tom needs special medicine and a surgery that might be scary to watch. Dr. William needs space to work so she can help him. He'll be scared without me, Laura argued, tears rising. He doesn't like hospitals, not since the fire. Maria wheeled forward, her expression soft. Laura, do you remember when we talked about being brave for the people we love? Sometimes being brave means letting others help. Dr. William, seeing the depth of their bond, offered a compromise. Laura, you can stay with Tom until he falls asleep from the anesthesia. Then you'll go with your dad and Grandma. I promise we'll keep you updated. Laura nodded slowly. Can I talk to him first so he knows I'll be waiting? Of course, Dr. Williams said, motioning for the staff to step back. Laura leaned down, her small hand stroking Tom's face. Tom, she whispered, Dr. Williams gonna fix you, but you have to go to sleep now. I'll be waiting right outside. I promise. You saved me, Grandma, and Sandy, just like you saved those lion cubs in the fire. You're the bravest, best dog in the world, and I love you more than anything. Tom, sedatives already taking hold, turned his head, his tongue weakly brushed Laura's hand. His eyes, clouded with pain, still held unwavering trust. Dr. Ramirez came a soft voice behind her. We're ready. Laura placed a final kiss on Tom's forehead and allowed her father to lead her away. At the doorway, she looked back. Fight hard, Tom, she called. Remember, you're my hero. The hours that followed were the longest of Laura's life. The cheerful yellow walls of the waiting room, covered in jungle murals, felt small and stifling. She paced, then curled against her grandmother's side. Jimmy brought her apple juice and animal crackers, untouched on the side table. Maria filled the silence with stories from her long veterinary career, miraculous recoveries, unlikely survival tales, the stubborn resilience of injured animals. Beneath the calm tone, Jimmy saw her intent. Nurture hope while preparing Laura for any outcome. Your Tom, Maria said, brushing Laura's hair, has already beaten the odds once. That dog's got more lives than a cat, and more heart than most people. 3 hours into surgery, Dr. Williams stepped into the doorway. Her surgical cap was still on. Shadows of fatigue ringed her eyes. Jimmy and Laura rose instantly. Maria leaned forward, knuckles white on her armrests. He's still in surgery, Dr. William began, voice cautious. There's extensive rib damage and pneumothorax, air in his chest cavity from a punctured lung. We've inserted a chest tube to relieve pressure and are working to repair his lung. But he's alive? Laura asked, just 2 words, but they held her whole world. Dr. Williams' expression softened. Yes, Laura, he's alive. He's fighting very hard. When could I see him? It'll be several hours, the doctor explained gently, and he'll have tubes and bandages. He'll stay here for at least a week, maybe longer. Laura nodded, absorbing it all with quiet resolve. But he's going to live, right? Dr. William hesitated, walking the line between hope and honesty. Tom has suffered very serious injuries, she said carefully. The next 24 hours are critical, but he's receiving the best care, and he has a remarkable will to live. As Dr. William returned to the oar, Laura climbed into Maria's lap, something she hadn't done in years. The elderly woman held her tight. Grandma, Laura whispered, face pressing to Maria's shoulder, is Tom going to die? Maria, who had never believed in lying to children, answered gently, I don't know, sweet pea. pee. He's hurt mighty bad. But I do know this. That dog loves you something fierce. And love like that is powerful medicine. As twilight painted the Arizona sky in pinks and purples, Director Callahan stepped into the waiting room. His uniform was dusty, his face weary. "I thought you wanted an update," he said, accepting a coffee from Jimmy. "We've secured most of the escaped animals. The python's been dealt with." His eyes flicked briefly toward Laura, and the lions returned to their habitat on their own. "But they were protecting Tom," Laura said firmly. Callahan nodded slowly. "That does seem to be the case. Our zoologists are reviewing old records and security footage from the Wilkinson fire, trying to understand the connection." Maria snorted. "Scientists always needing proof of what's plain as day. Those lions remembered. Tom saved them, pure and simple." Callahan smiled faintly. "Whatever the explanation, it's extraordinary. We've already had news outlets calling. A 3-legged dog, a 6-year-old girl, a python, and lions standing guard." He shook his head. "It's the kind of story that reminds people why conservation matters, why animals matter. Sometimes the wild waits, not out of instinct, but out of loyalty." The idea of sharing Tom's story, of the unexpected connections between species, lingered in the air. But before Jimmy could respond, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Through the waiting room's glass wall, they watched staff members rushing toward the clinic's rear entrance, their faces painted with disbelief and urgency. Dr. William appeared moments later, still in her surgical scrubs, her expression a strange blend of concern and wonder. "You all need to see this," she said simply, gesturing for them to follow. Jimmy helped Maria into her wheelchair, and together they followed Dr. William down the corridor to a rear observation room that overlooked the clinic's fence recovery yard, a space normally reserved for large animals in late-stage rehabilitation. "We noticed it about 20 minutes ago," Dr. William explained as they approached the glass. Security called in. Laura pressed her face to the window and gasped. There, just beyond recovery yard's fence, lay the lion pride, Lofasa, Malin, the other lionesses, and their cubs. They weren't pacing or snarling. They were simply waiting, arranged in a solemn semicircle, facing the building like a silent honor guard. "Good Lord above," Maria breathed, her usual composure cracking. "Would you look at that?" They followed him. Director Callahan shook his head in disbelief. "They must have tracked his scent. We checked the habitat fencing. No breaches. But one maintenance gate was left unlocked during the emergency. Are they dangerous?" Jimmy asked, instinctively placing a protective hand on Laura's shoulder. "They haven't shown any aggression," Dr. William assured him. "They're just here, waiting. Staff have been monitoring them. They're calm, not even chasing the rabbits that have wandered by." Laura's eyes didn't waver. There was no fear in her, only quiet certainty. "They're worried about Tom," she said softly. "They want to know if he's okay." The dawn over Safari Adventure came like a painting. Orange and gold spilled across the horizon, and still the lion pride remained. Park staff had cordoned off the area, maintaining a respectful distance while documenting the unprecedented behavior. Videos captured by astonished employees had already begun circulating among the team, sparking murmurs about animal intelligence and interspecies memory. Inside the clinic's ICU, Tom lay on a padded bed, surrounded by medical equipment. Tubes extended from his chest and foreleg, his remaining hind leg immobilized in a cast, his torso wrapped in thick white bandages where Dr. William had mended broken ribs and a punctured lung. The slow, steady beep of heart monitors filled the room, keeping time with each shallow breath. The surgery had lasted nearly 6 hours, a grueling marathon that had pushed the entire veterinary team to their limits. Twice, Tom's heart had faltered, requiring emergency interventions that left Dr. William and her staff soaked in stress-induced sweat. But despite all odds, Tom had survived the night. Laura had finally drifted into sleep just after midnight, curled up in a reclining chair with her head on Jimmy's lap. Jimmy remained awake, his thoughts on a torturous loop, trying to pinpoint the moment that might have changed the day, prevented the python, prevented the risk. Maria, ever aware of his tendency for self-blame, had stayed up beside him until her body forced surrender. She offered her own brand of firm, unpolished comfort. "You can't wrap that child in cotton wool, Jimmy," she'd said, her voice hushed so Laura wouldn't wake. Her mother wouldn't have wanted that. The mention of Bella Thompson, gone 4 years now to a ruthless cancer, still drew a visible flinch from Jimmy. "Bella would have had a heart attack as she saw Laura between a python and a pride of lions," he muttered. Maria patted his arm gently. "Maybe, but she would have been proud, too. That girl's got her mother's steel spine. Make no mistake." Now, as the early sun poured through the clinic windows, Dr. William entered the waiting room. Her face showed the fatigue of a sleepless night, but her eyes gleamed with cautious hope. "He's stable," she said without preamble. Laura stirred, blinking away sleep, clinging to the doctor's words. "The chest tube is functioning well. His lung is reinflating. Vitals have improved since midnight. We're not out of the woods yet, but he's doing better than I expected. Can I see him now?" Laura asked, the same plea she had whispered over and over through the night. Dr. William hesitated, running through protocol in her mind. Normally, ICU visitation was restricted, but this case had shattered every seen Norm already? Yes, she said finally, but only for a few minutes. You must be very quiet. He needs complete rest. Jimmy helped Maria into her wheelchair while Dr. William led Laura toward the ICU. At the threshold, she knelt to meet the girl's eyes. Remember what I told you. The machines and tubes, they help him breathe, monitor his heart. They look scary, but they're making him better. Laura nodded solemnly. Like when Mommy was in the hospital, she said softly. Dr. William's heart caught at the depth behind those words. She gently squeezed Laura's shoulder and pushed open the door. The ICU was quiet, dimly lit by soft overhead lighting. Tom lay in the largest enclosure, normally reserved for wildlife like jaguars or hyenas, now transformed into a canine critical care suite. A veterinary technician sat beside him, monitoring readings, adjusting medications. Laura approached slowly. The sight of Tom, his body wrapped in white, pierced with lines and tubes, his once proud frame lying still, stole the breath from her chest. "Hi, Tom," she whispered, kneeling and slipping her fingers through the bars to touch his paw. It was one of the few places not wrapped in gauze. "It's me, Laura. I'm here, just like I promised." Tom's eyes remained closed, his body subdued by sedatives. But as Laura's hand touched his paw, something remarkable happened. The heart monitor's rhythm slowed, calmer, steadier. The technician leaned in. "That's the calmest his vitals have been all night," she murmured, checking the blood pressure. "It's stabilizing too." Dr. Williams stared, amazed. She'd witnessed the emotional bonds between animals and humans before, but this was measurable, undeniable. She turned to Jimmy, who stood beside Maria. "There's research that shows emotional bonds can accelerate recovery," she said. "We may want to allow more regular visits. Laura's presence is helping." Jimmy nodded slowly. "Whatever helps him heal." Maria, her gaze locked on her granddaughter, added in a knowing voice, "When I was in practice, I saw animals come back from the brink because someone they loved was waiting. Science is catching up, but love's always been powerful medicine." The moment was interrupted by Director Callahan, who entered quietly and motioned for Jimmy to join him in the hallway. "We've been reviewing security footage from the Wilkinson fire," he said. "And Maria was right. Tom didn't just find the cubs. He went back into fire 3 times. Jimmy swallowed hard. The 3rd time, the roof collapsed on him. He shielded the youngest cub, Malin, the one with the notched ear. He saved her with his body. Jimmy ran a hand through his hair, the truth settling over him. "So the lions really do remember him," he murmured. Callahan nodded. "Our zoologists are stunned. We've already had inquiries from university researchers. Long-term interspecies recognition, especially in big cats. This could challenge a lot of current assumptions." Jimmy's eyes shifted toward the observation window. The lions still waited. "They can't stay there forever. That's the other reason I came," Callahan said. "We're building a temporary barrier around the yard. It'll allow visual contact but maintain safety. Dr. Abernathy thinks forcing them away might trigger distress or even aggression before they could continue." A sudden burst of commotion echoed from the ICU. Jimmy bolted back inside. Tom was awake, far earlier than expected. The shepherd's eyes were open, despite his injuries. He was trying to lift his head, gaze locked on Laura. "He shouldn't be conscious yet," Dr. Williams said urgently, checking IVs and sedation levels. "His meds should keep him under for hours." Maria smiled softly. "Some things are stronger than sedatives," she said. Laura crouched at Tom's side, stroking his head gently. "It's okay, Tom. You don't have to move. I'm right here." To everyone's astonishment, Tom responded. He stopped struggling, settled back. His eyes remained fixed on her, filled with pain, but also peace. He was looking for her, Maria said with certainty. He needed to see she was safe. The monitor showed his pain levels were rising, evidence of what he was enduring, but not a single spike suggested fear or panic. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. William admitted, adjusting the pain meds without raising the sedation. "He's choosing to stay awake because of her." Sometimes healing begins not in silence, but in the soft whisper of a child's promise. Dr. William made a quick decision, guided not just by the medical data, but by something deeper, the invisible thread connecting patient and child. "Laura, would you like to stay with Tom for a while?" she asked gently. "I think your presence is helping him." The little girl nodded eagerly. Dr. William turned to the technician. "Bring in a chair, something comfortable. We'll place it right next to Tom's enclosure." Once Laura was settled, she reached to the bars again, gently stroking the top of Tom's head, one of the few places not wrapped in bandages. "I'm right here, Tom," she whispered. "You just focus on getting better." To the quiet astonishment of the medical staff, Tom's vital signs began to stabilize almost immediately. His pain indicators dropped, despite no adjustment to his medication. His eyes, though heavy with fatigue, stayed half-lidded, unwilling to lose sight of the small girl beside him. "Well, I'll be," Maria murmured, her weathered face softening with awe. "In all my years of practice, I've seen some miracles, but this?" She shook her head slowly, eyes glistening, as Tom finally drifted into a deep, healing sleep, his paw still pressed against Laura's hand through the bars. Outside the ICU window, the first rays of sunrise bathed the recovery yard in golden light. The lion pride remained. Malin, the notched-eared lioness, had crept closest to the fence. Her amber eyes were locked on the clinic building, as if she could sense what lay within. It was a moment that defied every known rule. An injured, three-legged dog lying in a veterinary ICU, a pride of lions standing guard outside, and a 6-year-old girl bridging them all with nothing but love. Over the next 2 weeks, Safari Adventure became something out of a dream. Despite director Callahan's best efforts to contain media interest, the story of Tom, Laura, and the lion pride spread like wildfire. By the end of the first week, news vans lined the park's main road. Headlines dubbed the phenomenon either the lion's vigil or the pride's promise. Tom's recovery progressed with what Dr. William called miraculous determination. The chest tube came out on day 5, his lung fully reinflated and functioning ahead of schedule. His incisions showed minimal infection, and even his shattered hind leg began knitting together cleanly, though full rehabilitation would take months. Throughout it all, Laura was there. Safari Adventure converted a small office adjacent to the recovery ward into a temporary bedroom for her. While Jimmy worked his shifts and Maria supervised from the staff lodging, Laura remained Tom's constant. The arrangement was unconventional, but no one questioned it. His cortisol levels drop significantly when she's nearby. Dr. William explained to a group of veterinary students, "We're witnessing healing that goes beyond medical intervention." The lion stayed for 10 days. They didn't prowl or growl. They waited with unshakable patience and a calm that amazed even veteran wildlife experts. They left only after Tom was transferred out of the ICU into the recovery ward, a move that coincided with a moment that stunned everyone. Tom stood. It was brief, wobbly, and supported by therapy harnesses, but he stood. Laura clapped, her joy so pure that nurses passing the hallway wiped away unexpected tears. It was as if the entire building had been holding its breath. The morning after the lions returned to their habitat, Director Callahan found Jimmy and Maria in the small courtyard where Tom now took supervised walks. Laura supported his right side, careful and steady, while Maria observed with professional eye. "We've had an idea," Callahan said, watching Tom take shaky steps on the grass. "The board's been talking. They want to recognize what happened here with a new educational exhibit on animal cognition and cross-species memory. Tom and the lions will be the centerpiece." Jimmy frowned. "I appreciate the thought, Ronan, but Tom is an exhibit. He's a retired search and rescue dog. He's been through enough." "Of course," Callahan said quickly. "We're not suggesting displaying Tom. We'd create a center that tells his story, his career, the python rescue, the lion's vigil. There will be information about animal intelligence, memory, and similar documented cases." Maria adjusted her glasses. "And what would that mean for Laura and Tom?" Callahan nodded. "Well, for starters, we want to offer Jimmy a new position, Director of Education and Conservation Outreach. Regular hours, no overnight shifts, and a substantial raise." He turned to Jimmy. "Your wildlife background, your connection to the story, it's a perfect fit." Jimmy looked stunned. Since Bella's death, he'd struggled to juggle overnight shifts and parenting. Maria had held them together. The offer felt like a new life being extended. "There's more," Callahan added. "The board has approved a full scholarship for Laura through college, no matter what you decide about the job." Maria snorted. "Well, it's about time those boardroom fossils put their donation money to good use. Though I suspect this generosity has something to do with all those cameras parked out front." Callahan had the decency to blush. "The publicity hasn't hurt, but it's more than that. This changes everything we thought we knew about animal memory and cognition. It has to be shared." Before Jimmy could respond, Laura's voice rang out. "Daddy, Grandma, look." Tom is wagging his tail. They turned to see it, slow, tentative, but unmistakable. Tom's first wag since surgery. Jimmy felt his throat tighten. Laura knelt beside him, her face lit with joy. That small movement was everything. "Well, think about it, Ronan," Jimmy said quietly, "but it has to be what's best for them. They've been through enough." Spring arrived in Arizona like an apology, erupting across the desert with a riot of wildflowers. Tom continued to defy expectations. By the 6th week, he walked short distances unaided. His unique gait, missing front leg, newly healed back leg, became something Laura proudly declared extra special just like him. Media interest faded, though National Geographic and several scientific journals received permission to document controlled interactions between Tom and the lion pride. These meetings were nothing short of remarkable. In a specially fenced area adjacent to the lion habitat, Tom, now strong enough for outdoor time, would be brought to sit with Laura. Malin would approach, often lying just on the other side of the barrier. Sometimes, she chuffed, a sound lions use to greet those they trust. Tom would reply with a low whine, tail gently swishing. Animal behaviors observed every second. "This is rewriting our understanding of long-term memory in big cats," Dr. Abernathy, Safari Adventures lead zoologist, explained during one session. "We never believed lions retain specific recognition of individuals from other species after years apart. But here, the evidence is undeniable." Maria, sitting beside them in a folding chair, scoffed. "Any farmer never could have told you animals remember, she told a visiting Cornell professor. My barn cat hissed at the same vet 10 years later. Animals know who helped them and who didn't. On a particularly golden April afternoon, Jimmy called a family meeting on the porch of their new home, a ranch house on safari adventure property that came with his new position. Tom dozed nearby, his coat glossy again despite the weight he'd lost. Jimmy looked at Laura, who was busy weaving a friendship bracelet. I've been thinking about Director Callahan's exhibit, he began. The one about Tom and the lions. Laura looked up curious. Would people come to learn about Tom being a hero? They would, Jimmy said, but I want to be sure you understand what it means. There would be pictures of you and Tom, stories about the python. People might recognize you, ask questions. Maria rocked in her chair, observing silently. Since the incident, she had watched Laura closely, waiting for signs of trauma, but none came. Instead, Laura grew more confident, more sure of herself. Would it help other kids? Laura asked softly. Help them understand animals? That they're smarter than people think. Jimmy nodded. That's one of the goals. To show animals remember kindness, and they can return it in their own way. Laura thought for a moment, brow furrowed. Then she turned to Tom, who had opened his eyes at the sound of her voice. What do you think, Tom? She asked with a little smile. Would you like to be famous? Sometimes, the heart remembers what the mind cannot explain. The shepherd lifted his head, his eyes moving from Laura to Jimmy, then to Maria, as if truly considering the question. Then, with deliberate certainty, he gave a single, echoing woof. Laura giggled. Maria chuckled. I think that's a yes, Laura declared with the absolute conviction only childhood can provide, but only if we do it together. And so it was decided on the 1-year anniversary of what locals now simply called the Python Incident, the Tom Thompson Education Center opened its doors at Safari Adventure. The modern building stood as a tribute to courage, compassion, and the invisible threads that bind us across species. Inside, visitors explored interactive exhibits on animal cognition, a detailed history of Tom's heroic career in search and rescue, and a small theater screening edited footage of the Lion Pride's unprecedented vigil. But the most visited area by far was the outdoor observation platform. There, on carefully scheduled days, guests could witness a living miracle, the enduring bond between a 3-legged dog and a pride of lions. The sessions were designed with the animal's well-being in mind, and Laura, now a confident 7-year-old, often served as a junior guide. She'd stand proudly beside Tom and tell wide-eyed children how her dog once saved lion cubs from fire, and how those lions remembered his kindness, even years later. Animals are a lot like people, she'd say, echoing lessons learned from her grandmother. They remember who was kind to them. They know love when they feel it. And sometimes they surprise us by being braver and smarter than we ever expected. One golden afternoon, as shadows stretched long across the park grounds, Maria Thompson sat on a shaded bench outside the education center. She watched her granddaughter lead a group of visiting school children through Tom's story, the shepherd walking beside her with a proud, graceful stride. His gait, though distinct, was fluid now, his missing leg no longer a limitation, just a part of who he was. Jimmy appeared beside Maria and handed her a paper cup of cinnamon tea. A penny for your thoughts? He asked, following her gaze. I was just thinking about Bella, Maria replied softly. How proud she would be of both of you. Jimmy nodded, the mention of his late wife no longer bringing sharp pain, but rather a warm ache, a gentle echo of love that never truly left. She always said Laura would do something extraordinary one day, he murmured. I just didn't expect it to happen at 6 years old. Maria smiled, her hands wrapped around the tea. Life rarely sticks to our plans. That's what makes it such a beautiful mess.
As the group moved toward the lion habitat viewing window, Laura glanced back. Seeing her father and grandmother watching, she waved, her smile bright and sure. Tom looked too, his eyes sharp and affectionate. His tail wagged contentedly. Beyond the glass, Milan stood near the window. Her cubs, now nearly full-grown, lounged in the sun behind her. But Milan watched only Tom and Laura, her golden eyes calm, her body language serene. She remained the quiet guardian she had become. You know, Maria said, her voice catching with emotion, in all my 73 years I've seen a lot of wonders, but that child, that dog, and those lions, they've taught me that there's always something new to discover, even when you think you've seen it all. Jimmy followed her gaze, watching as Laura knelt to explain how lions use vocalizations and body language to communicate, her voice ringing across the area with clarity and confidence born from experience few others would ever know. In a world that sometimes feels too dark, Maria continued, eyes misty with unshed tears, it does an old heart good to witness something so pure. That python, yes, it was a terrible danger, but it led to something beautiful, a reminder that love and kindness cross all boundaries, even the ones we humans insist on drawing. As if understanding her words, Tom turned once more. The afternoon sun caught the silver threads beginning to show around his muzzle, badges of age and the battles he'd survived. Yet his eyes remained bright, alert, and impossibly loyal. He had been a hero to strangers, a savior to lions, and the best friend a little girl could ever ask for. And in that moment, as sunset spilled golden light across safari adventure, the story of a child, a dog, and a pride of lions felt not only possible but inevitable, because some stories aren't just told, they're remembered, carried in the heart like truth. Moral and final message. Folks, remember when life was simpler, when a child's bond with their dog was sacred, when courage wasn't measured in likes but in loyalty. Laura and Tom's story reminds us of what we've always known in our hearts, but sometimes forget in this fast-paced world. Loyalty transcends words, gratitude knows no species, and love leaves marks that time can never erase. Like many who've weathered life's storms, Tom didn't let his missing leg define him. He simply adjusted his stride and moved forward, just like Maria, whose quiet wisdom anchored a family, just like Laura, who found her courage in the face of a serpent, and just like the lions, who proved that even the wildest hearts remember kindness. In a world hungry for meaning, their story reminds us kindness comes back, love leaves legacies, and connection, real connection, is never forgotten.